It's like the rainbow sprinkles on top of the ice cream, which for my daughter, that's what does it. It's the rainbow sprinkles. Any ice cream is just immediately better in a sense, right? Welcome to the Talking AI podcast, where we talk AI with both experts in the field and early adopters. I'm your host, Matt Page, and we're here to demystify AI for you so you can get some value from it. Let's talk some AI. AI wrappers have no moat, they're not defensible, and ChatGPT is just going to continue to eliminate them with each new release. Maybe not. Maybe we're thinking about this in the wrong context. And here with me to discuss that is Clay Ostrom, founder of Map and Fire, also an expert in positioning. So we're going to get into some of that on positioning for AI products with this crazy AI washing we have going on. But he's actually built an AI native solution in support of his business, which I love that use case and how people are starting to do that. Dare I say it's an AI wrapper. However, there's real value being provided to his business, to his customers. But welcome to the show, Clay.
It's great to be here, and I am eagerly awaiting to challenge some of your upfront setting up there. Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of variation and diversity around some of the apps being created right now.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like I was 100% on the bandwagon of AI wrappers have no defensibility. We even did a podcast on this exact topic last season where no defensibility. They're just going to get eliminated with each new release of ChatGPT. Don't even bother building these solutions that are just basically AI wrappers. And then you see tools like Cursor, the fastest one to 100 million. See all these unique tools popping up within very niche use cases. And it's this light bulb just hitting my head. And I'm curious your take here. And then we'll actually get into what you've built because I want to use it as an example for how folks should be thinking about it. Yeah. But humans are lazy. We are lazy. And like we're just creatures of habit. That's how we're built. We work smarter, not harder, right? So when we have something that makes things easy, is very domain specific to our use case, specific to our pain point, we use it. And go back to like how SaaS blew up. All SaaS is basically, you could do any SaaS product in Excel, but you don't because it's a pain in the butt. But curious, what's your thoughts on that? Are you in the camp of AI wrappers bad, AI wrappers good, or somewhere in between?
Well, I mean, like I said, there's so many flavors of this, and I think so many levels of what you might consider to be a wrapper. And obviously we can dig into this more, and I would love to I can talk more specifically again about what I built and how I don't necessarily view as a wrapper. I think there's more going on there. So the short answer is yes. I think if you're just a wrapper, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to defend that. But if you can bake in a little bit more of your specific point of view and kind of how you approach stuff, and also just like you said, the specificity of a specific use case, a specific industry, I think there can be some defensibility around that.
Wait, let's get into that. What in your context, and we can kind of like brainstorm on this live. I know for people listening, they'll find some value in this, but what makes something valuable or not an AI wrapper, just that bit extra that you're talking about? What attributes does a solution have that make it still something worth doing, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, so to me, again, it is like, are you using the response back just sort of like face value as is, or are you doing something else with that data? Are you taking pieces of data, analyzing it, configuring it in some special way, applying some kind of, special sauce of sorts like to it? That was exactly what I was thinking about when I built, our app. It was like, I don't want this to be just a wrapper. I don't want this to just be as simple as we plug in a prompt and you get a response back. I want to be putting our stamp on this and applying some of our own thinking behind the scenes around how this works and how we present and configure the data. I think about it a lot, and the comparison I make often is with the Hrefs, SEMrushes of the world, where they're going out and just scraping data, right? Like there are tons and tons of data, but they're also applying their own smarts on top of that. They're taking the data and they're coming up with scoring systems and, additional analysis that is beyond just what you would get from, a Google search, which obviously anybody could go out and just do some of that work themselves, but they're getting all the additional value from these tools.
So basically, it's like the rainbow sprinkles on top of the ice cream, which for my daughter, that's what does it. It's the rainbow sprinkles. Any ice cream is just immediately better in a sense, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, I would say it's at least rainbow sprinkles. Maybe it's also chopped nuts and some whipped cream. Like it's a
Yeah, yeah.
combination of stuff, going on. But yeah.
The single biggest mistake we see companies make with AI is they don't properly train their teams. We see it all the time. Companies roll out AI tools and expect people to just figure it out. But using AI effectively requires a totally different mindset and skill set. And that's exactly why we built training for every level of your org, from AI training for teams and executives to training engineering teams on our generative driven development methodology. Or if you've already identified your AI use cases and want to just prioritize where to start, we offer an AI roadmap and ROI workshop to help you build a clear plan. It's all about going from we should use AI to actually driving real value with it. Head over to hatchworks.com to learn more. The biggest thing to me, you hinted at it, is leveraging proprietary data. Because as we all know, AI has literally been trained on the entire internet. It has everything. But what it doesn't have is your proprietary data that it just can't access via the internet. So to your point earlier, being able to leverage that in a unique way that only you possess, I think is like one of the most immediate ways when people are building solutions. Can I have that? That equals differentiation. That equals defensibility in a sense. And I also think there's this, I'd be curious your take here, because I have this like perspective that incumbents are going to be experiencing the biggest, most impactful innovator's dilemma of our time, of ever, in my opinion, versus new entrants in the market. Because new entrants, I mean, there's a case where you could say you don't need as many humans to build a business, and they're, what is it, the constraints, or the, whatever the Steve Jobs quote is, constraints drive innovation, right? So they're going to innovate with less people, leveraging the latest and greatest tools and AI and everything there. And incumbents, they have massive teams. They have lots of bureaucracy, lots of process. But what they do have is lots of data as well. So I know I said a lot there, like thoughts on the data side, thoughts on the incumbent battle between new entrants and incumbents. Who's going to win there? What do incumbents need to do to actually win?
Yeah. Well, that's the other piece of the moat puzzle for me is the data accumulation side, like you're saying. And to me, that's the other piece of what I wanted to do, again, using our app as a reference point, was building up a catalog, a library, a database of all the analysis that we've done, so that when you come in, you have instant access to that. You're not having to do a bunch of stuff from scratch. You can just get all that stuff right away. But by building up that analysis, which again is based off of our own, semi kind of proprietary, way of going about things, it does start to create something that you simply can't get anywhere else, and I think that's the approach that people need to be taking with these kinds of apps.
Yeah. And I think the other angle that I keep leaning in onto is domain specificity, right? Can you focus in on a niche that's underserved? And then whatever unique workflow process, whatever it is tied to that, I think that's the other angle too. And what's interesting now is anybody now can build something leveraging AI. We'll get into this in a bit. I know your solution, you leverage more of kind of no-code tools, but I was playing with this morning N8N or Naten, I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's like, it's, the new version of Zapier, equivalent to make.com. And just playing around with it, saying, okay, what can we automate in our business? We have a ton of these like manual processes. And instead of me just like poking around in the tool, I asked ChatGPT, right? And I had this like video I saw on YouTube or something. I was like, okay, how do I do this? And I gave it the image, I gave it the link to the video. And I swear to God, it literally took me through step by step how to do everything. And it got complex. And what I learned, Google has you can create custom search engines. So I pointed this one to LinkedIn, right? And it had they have a web scraping tool. So now it's going towards LinkedIn. It's scraping LinkedIn so you don't get in trouble with, the plugins and stuff that LinkedIn hates.
Yeah.
It scrapes LinkedIn. And then I did all these like webhooks, hooked it up to Google Sheets, and it's like I can put in some criteria, and it's doing a search in LinkedIn and returning back people. And then the next step's like, okay, let me hook that to AI, and then what we offer, and then just kind of automate that whole outbound thing. But it's like
Yeah.
that companion piece of leveraging AI in the building process, whether it's like showing you how or just like all the way to the extreme of Cursor or Replit or Lovable, and it just builds the thing custom for you.
Yeah, I know. I was playing with Lovable recently, and like you said, the app I have is a no-code app with AI in the background, and I was playing with Lovable, which maybe a lot of people know now is truly like a text entry to
Yeah.
create an app kind of, solution. And it was pretty wild, I have to say. I mean, I have a CS background, so, as you're watching it write pages and pages of code for you to build a solution, it was pretty crazy to see what it could do in a very short.
And it just keeps getting better is the crazy thing. And that's the other piece. And then we're going to get into the tool because I want to like actually go through it. You can build with AI, and then you can integrate AI into your solutions. There's kind of those two paths in a sense. But the other piece, it's almost like you can build for an audience of one, right? You don't have to have this huge plan to say, oh, I got to scale this thing to 1 million users to get an ROI on it. That's like no longer the case in a sense. And I had another point on the Moat and wrappers, and I forgot it, but it'll come back to me. But let's get into
before you jump into that, I was just going to say, to that point about an audience of one, I think it's really interesting. Like going back to your earlier point about how many resources you need or don't need these days to create something. I think it was Sam Altman who said something like, we're going to see like the first, I don't know if it was like $100 million company built by a solopreneur.
No, I think he had a B in there.
Or maybe it was a billion. Yeah, you're right. It had to be a B. It wouldn't be sexy if it wasn't a B. But I really think that's where we're headed in a lot of ways. The resources needed to build something are obviously dropping dramatically, and it's going to come down more and more to marketing and positioning and brand and being able to, get whatever audience you are trying to get, whether that's one or hundreds of thousands, it's going to come down to your ability to execute on that.
And that's a great transition. And then there's the whole agentic side of it, which is like a whole nother conversation. But that's essentially what you do. You're kind of like a positioning expert, Map and Fire. That's your agency, and you built this tool in support of it. So, hey, I think set some context. Like, what do y'all do? And if you want to, like, even just pull up the tool. And for those listening on just, Apple or Spotify, we will be very detailed in our explanation of what's happening.
Yeah. So in Map and Fire, we do a mix of customer research work, and we do a lot of positioning, messaging work for brands. So I'm spending basically all of my time thinking about this stuff. I'm thinking about like, how can brands set themselves apart, especially right now with competitive, as we're saying, like tools instantly accessible, can be built in a day, competition levels going through the roof. How do you separate yourself? It's hard, and it's only going to get harder.
Yeah, so exactly.
Yeah. But for us, it's a mix of, the customer research piece, I think, is always going to be critical. Like, obviously, you need to understand who you're trying to serve, what their needs are, and, and also understanding the competitive space where you can separate yourself, And I think the tool we built is one piece of the puzzle to simplify some of those things. I'm still of the belief, and this maybe taps into some of your agentic side of the equation, but I still think we need humans. We still need people to be able to kind of pull all these pieces together and make sense of it all. But at least we can get data more accessible and make it more efficient to get it.
Yeah, and maybe we hit that point now, and then maybe you should be able to share and start pulling the thing up as we go.
Sure.
But I agree with you to this extent. I think the role of the human changes. I think we go from the doer to the orchestrator, leveraging AI, right? And I think the point makes a lot of sense where AI makes you better, AI enables you. That's 100% true. I do think, though, because I feel like there's some folks that say, oh, there's not going to be any job disruption. I think we may be naive in thinking that, because I think some jobs will go away. But I think what will happen is new opportunities and jobs will emerge. So I think for all of us, all the people listening, the more you learn into AI, learning it and leveraging it in what you're doing, the more, okay, back to Moat and differentiation, the better differentiated and defensible you are going to be, in a sense.
Yeah.
That's kind of my hot take on it.
Yeah, I don't even think it's, a super hot take. I mean, I think you're right. I think over time, more and more stuff will be doable with AI and other tools. And what the humans need to do, or where we're really good, is going to continue to kind of narrow down. But it still, and again, maybe I'm naive, but it still feels far away, some of it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I feel like every morning I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, they can do this now.
Man, that's a real thing though, because I keep going through these moments of, yeah, okay, we still have some things that we kind of own, and then the next thing comes out, and I'm like, holy shit,
Yeah.
you can do that now.
I know,
It's every day. There's just something coming out.
I know. And then I'll talk to people who are not deep in this space, and they're just kind of living their life and have no kind of real idea of what's going on. So, it feels very immediate and very close to us, and some of it is. And then I think for
because we live in it every day.
the larger bubble out there, it's still kind of a buzzword. It's oh, that's interesting, but this doesn't impact my life in any way. And maybe
Totally
those
agree.
people just get surprised one morning.
Well, that's a great analogy, and I promise we'll get to the tool here in a second.
Oh,
But
sure,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
incumbents and companies are going to go through that same thing. I think it's going to be like,
Oh, yeah. Yep.
it's fine. We're using AI. It's good. We're good. And then all of a sudden there'll be a new company, startup, whatever it is, that does the thing they do in just a wholly different way, totally different business model, totally different cost structure, margin structure, everything. And then it goes from, okay, we have our brand equity, and people just, because humans don't like change. They will
Yep.
do anything they can to avoid change. But
Yep.
then I feel like with the big incumbents, it'll be like a dam breaking. And once the dam breaks, like you can't move fast enough. And it's kind of what you're saying at the personal level, in a sense too. It's, it'll creep up on a lot of people and companies, I think.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. I think even we think of these brands as being so sophisticated and on top of everything, but they're also massive. They move incredibly slow. The bigger you get, the harder it is to adapt and change. And I think there will absolutely be a lot of these big companies that just get heavily disrupted in a short period of time. I mean, we've already seen one version of that with OpenAI, ChatGPT, and Google. I think people are now, shifting behaviors. I mean, behaviors that have been now baked into us for decades of like Google is just the way to do it, to find information, and it's not anymore. Like
that is a great example. And I've almost fully switched to ChatGPT, Perplexity or something for almost all of my searches. The only ones I don't do, I still haven't completely switched over, is if they're like location specific, like restaurant. And to be honest, ChatGPT and Perplexity can do those great. I think I'm still just very familiar with, how it shows the map and I can click on the details and all that. But everything else, and it's and another point too on that, it's a different way you approach stuff, right? Because with Google, you search. You go then have to research through all the different links and whatever they are, blogs and things like that. But now you can kind of use it as a partner with, name your AI tool, ChatGPT or whatever. Like the other day, I was having issues with my garage door opener. And I just put it on voice mode with video and had it walk me through the steps there. I had done the same thing with like things on my computer, but it's a different like use case where I would have had to call somebody and get help. You can now just go to ChatGPT.
Yeah. And I mean, and to your point about people's behaviors changing slowly or we being resistant to change, that's a great example of how, in many ways, that's just a more intuitive use case or like a more for us. Like we're used to having to say, oh, I've got to go to my phone or I've got to go to my computer. I've got to type in a keyword that will help get me to part of the answer. And now I can say in plain English what I'm trying to do and it will give me, the steps to actually accomplish what I'm trying to do. So
exactly.
Pretty
so walk
wild.
us through this. So this is almost, think of it, it's like a tool that you use internally. It's also kind of a cool, like smart lead gen tool as well. But I love the name, like Smoke Ladder with the map and fire. And I'm assuming like smoke
Yeah.
signals, kind of like where you're going and whatnot.
Yeah, that was the inspiration was, thinking about when you get your positioning locked in, it's like a smoke signal. You're putting up, something that's high
Yeah.
above the competitive noise that people can spot from far away and, draw them into your brand. So that's how I think about, or at least that's kind of like the analogy with positioning. Um, but yeah, so again, I know some people are just listening to this, but yeah, just looking at the homepage of the app and there's like basically a search bar. I wanted to create an app you could just kind of jump in and get started right away. That was also important to me, just making it very easy. I used an example here. I don't know if you're familiar with this tool called Tela. It's like a video recording tool.
Mm.
I've been
I
using
don't
it a
think I
bunch
am.
for
No.
for content. It's been super helpful for me.
I'm a big
So
Descript fan, so I'm
yeah,
on that.
I've used Descript a lot too, and I ended up switching to Tela because it had some better configurability around like can do side by side video when you're doing app demos and things like
Oh,
that.
that's
It
cool.
makes it
Yeah.
very seamless
Yeah.
to adjust those things. So anyway, jumping into the actual app, it's designed to analyze two
So tell
major
us the
things.
company we're going to investigate. That's the
Yeah,
one we're going to run through this exercise, right?
exactly. So we'll do a
Cool.
quick kind of analysis with Tela. And the app, Smoke Ladder, is basically designed to look at your messaging and your positioning and help you analyze those things, figure out where there's opportunities, improve it, all that good stuff. Um, so this first screen here is basically an overview. It's giving you just kind of like a quick rundown of some of the messaging analysis and positioning
That's cool.
points.
For those
Um,
watching, it's got like scoring in here. Back to your point earlier, it's
yeah,
taking like data insights, but then it's adding a layer of, you know, kind of metrics and things on top of it in a sense.
basically, yeah. So there's a few different kind of steps with this. So the first piece is the message clarity,
Oh,
which
cool.
this will come in and just kind of look at your messaging, and then it just sort of tells you, are you hitting certain marks, certain criteria that you make sure you have, kind of represented in your messaging. So who our target customer is, what's our category, what's our offering, like how are we different?
Yeah.
And then one of my favorite things down here at the bottom is it'll do a quick check around like industry jargon and like vague words that
There
you're
you go.
using.
Yeah.
I think we're all kind of allergic now to, to a lot of the jargon stuff. So it can kind of help highlight some of those things. And then going to what you were just saying a second ago, this positioning section is where we do some of that, sort of proprietary analysis. So we're collecting these data points, looking at the brand across all these different points of business value, but then doing some additional calculations on the back end to help bubble that up to a simplified score.
No, that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So,
Yeah.
and what Clay doesn't know is I got him on the podcast to get some free consulting for Atrix AI. But this kind of transitions into your positioning expert. Everybody's talking about AI right now. I'm curious your thought. And let me break it down for how we're thinking about it and just your thoughts. So we build custom software solutions. That's kind of how we grew up. Was our original company back in 2016 when, this whole idea of generative AI wasn't even a dream yet. It took till the next year when the AI transformer paper came out by Google. And we were a very product focused company. But since this inflection point happened, we kind of have gone all into it. And, but the thing is, every other company like us says the same exact thing. They're all AI power. They have AI services, even if it's all just smoke and mirrors, back to our smoke and ladder tool here, they're still going to say it. So the customer's kind of left thinking, okay, well, do you really do this or not? So one thing that we've kind of built is our proprietary framework methodology for building with AI. It's still evolving, and we're going to actually start bringing it to life in the market very soon. But essentially, and it's just been as of late too, it's really changed in terms of how you build. Right, we're used to having these huge teams with the Scrum Master, the BA, the QA person, tons of developers. It's just very difficult to manage. But back to that analogy of moving the person to the orchestrator, AI as the executor, it's a totally different approach. You can build so much faster and just, it doesn't matter what language you're using. You don't have to have the human that knows the deep syntax of this language. You just you almost need a different type of engineer, which we're kind of like framing as an agentic engineer that has deep, like architectural understanding They're in the loop of AI building. They can spot when it's kind of going off the rails.
Yeah.
And the stuff we're starting to do, we're starting with more like greenfield startup type projects, internal use cases, but it's just night and day what we can build. So like, I'll step back there. Like, how do we build our awareness and make a name for ourselves in this extremely crowded category of, ultimately you can call it services at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, just to finish this out, and I think this
Yeah.
really ties in with exactly what you're asking, I'm going to just show you really quickly how we kind of approach differentiation, which I think is kind of at the heart of what you're talking about here. It's like there's us and then there's a million other providers,
much
and
noise.
like, how do we kind of stand out? So just as an example here, so the other, screen recording tool, kind of like the market leader, is Loom.
I look at that. Yeah.
So this gives you a chance to look. So what we're looking at now is like an overlay of the points of value with Tela versus the points of value with Loom. And where is each brand strong? Like, where are you weak? What are the things that you're really emphasizing? And what are the things that your competitors really emphasizing?
Yeah.
And trying to find
for
those
those
gaps.
watching, this basically has an overlay visually across these different attributes. One line is Tela, one is Loom. And then this gives you context for where they're strong, where they're weak, essentially.
Exactly.
It gives you guidance for where to dig in, I guess.
Yeah. And then backing that up, there's qualitative descriptions around why, they got the scores that they did and why they're strong or weak. And down here at the bottom, we actually pull out like where are the biggest differences. So if I'm Tela, where do I currently have the biggest separation from Loom? Like, if I'm trying to get a tiny piece of their market share. And like I said, I actually use Tela, and, we call out here like marketability, configurability as being like their strengths. And I would say that's absolutely true. I think what they're really good at is creating marketable content, whereas Loom's kind of more of a communication tool in mind for like internal videos and things. Anyway, so the reason I wanted to show this was I think it ties to your point, which is we are more and more getting into a space where like the devil's in the details. Like it's going to come down to, is there one or two very specific points of emphasis that your brand can have that you can really lean into that separates you in some meaningful way from a competitor?
Yeah. So I got the next, you may already have this built into the tool, but next feature enhancement. So I was playing with deep research the other day because it's now on the plus plan. So us regular people paying $20 a month got access. But I saw somebody, I think it was Dan Sanchez on LinkedIn. He put out this prompt. I was like, oh, that's cool. And it was basically like competitive. It was like a sentiment type of thing. But what was neat is it was going out and searching Reddit, G2, Clutch, things like that. So then you're actually getting to see real customers or past customers talking about the brand. But I don't know if you already have that in there, but that could be like the next thing where it's, okay, I see how you're publicly facing, but how do people, your customers, really think about you in a sense?
Yeah, no, that's definitely like the next piece that's not really built into this right now. This is really kind of focused on how are you presenting yourself, to the world, which to me,
I guess the customer stuff could almost be like related to your delivery in a sense too, like the actual product itself and how good it really is, which is kind of different, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think that you're absolutely right. I think that's kind of, in many ways, the other side of the equation is how do your customers interpret what you do, or, why you think they're good or bad or whatever. So right now we're kind of focused more on the how are you presenting yourself, which to me is the most direct line we have to your strategy. It's like in a lot of brands don't do a great job of actually articulating their strategy. And that's what this is kind of meant to call out. So whether you're talking to a new client, trying to get up to speed on their space and their category quickly, you can kind of use some of this, or you're actually like working on your, like you guys working on your own positioning. So,
well, here's like I've had this idea and we're starting to build it out. But a big thing when we're building something custom is the discovery side of it. And a lot of times we'll do like strategic engagements where you're trying to like assess what's going on in the org, where are the areas for opportunity. And I've done these engagements and they're so painful because you got to go find the right people to talk to. You then got to get them to answer their email or phone call and then schedule their time that actually works for their calendar, your calendar. You got to prep for the interview. You got to do the interview. Then you got to go rewatch the interview to get the insights. Do that by however many times you do, and it's exhausting. But there's tools now. I've been playing with one called Bland AI, and there's several of these like voice-based tools. But like you theoretically, and I'm starting to build this out, you can do that same thing where you give AI a persona, tell it how it's framing the discovery, what questions it's going to, the ability to go down rabbit holes when it wants to, and then it's bringing back all that insight, and then it's pulling out, okay, where's the interesting points? Who should I go talk to deeper? But the beautiful thing is I could send that to 100 people within an organization. They take the interview on their own time, and it kind of does the high level work that takes a very long time for you, and then allows you to get to the very focused, important work, which is almost similar to this tool, totally different use case. But that's like how people, I think, really need to start thinking about things differently now that you have these tools at your disposal.
Yeah. And I mean, again, as someone who does a lot of customer research work, I see the potential of it. And at the same time, I'm like, this is another one of those human moats that I feel like we still have, which is the ability to ask not just a question, but the follow-up question, to dig deeper, to look at the reactions of people, to understand the emotion of people, to say, oh, this person's maybe a little uncomfortable about this. I'm going to approach it from another angle, or I'm going to ask it a different way, or this is something I actually really need to dig into. I actually talked to some founders of a startup who are working on this problem and like developing a tool to kind of do AI interview, like an interview product. And I was talking to them about these exact things. And, I don't think it's there yet. I don't mean their product specifically, but just I don't think the technology is there yet. But this is another space where we may wake up and all of a sudden, AI is really good at interpreting those
but I think
signals.
It's smart by that client in your sense, because you're almost making this assumption that the technology will be there. So let's go build the thing now. And it reminds me, right, when they went from video to streaming, the technology wasn't there, but they knew it was going to get there in a sense. And I'm kind of like you. I keep going back and forth in my head if, that nuance of being in the discussion, is that uniquely human, or is it getting to that inflection point? Or like to the point earlier, is it just like the first cursory view and then you're going deeper into the nuance part? So I think it's going to be interesting to see how it all kind of plays out over time.
Yeah, I know. It's like I always think about it as what's just sort of like the level of complexity with whatever problem space we're talking about. And human beings, understanding human beings and interacting with them is one of the most complex things you can do, because we're so weird and, with the way we think about stuff. And so again, I'm hoping that's a space that'll be protected a little longer than maybe some others. But again, I could be the naive one who wakes up tomorrow and there's this generative interviewer who's just sort of like perfectly attuned at like reading human signals. And I don't know.
I feel like it's going to be similar to the .com era and bubble, where a million ideas, a bunch crash and burn. Everybody's, this isn't going to, materialize. And then there's those companies that are really digging in and doing the hard work, and then it comes back. I would not be surprised if we have that similar kind of trajectory happening at play.
Yeah, I agree.
Last thing I got for you.
Sure.
So what's your take on the whole AI washing, everybody leveraging AI, bolting it on, from like a person who lives in positioning every day? Your perspective on it, where things are going to go, does it just become inherently part of the product? And then how do you think about that?
Yeah, I did a study, like an informal study a few months ago, where I was looking at, I don't know, I think I ended up looking at like 50 or so of the top B2B brands, because I wanted to see how much they're using AI, at least to sort of in their core messaging. And it was, I think, about 70% were at least talking about AI. There was like a very small fraction. It might have been like more like 10 or 20% that didn't talk about AI at all. And everybody else was talking about it in some capacity. And some of them, like the intercoms of the world, were just deep on it. Like,
all in,
like 50 references
Salesforce.
to AI. Yeah,
That's another
exactly.
one.
Yep.
Like with Agentforce.
Salesforce. Yeah. HubSpot had a ton. Asana had a ton. And some of
Mhm.
these brands have already, just since I did that sort of study, have already started to dial back on how much putting on just AI as a thing.
Yeah.
I think to me, that's where we're headed because AI, to your point, has already quickly become kind of table stakes, generally speaking, for most brands. They have some kind of integration with it. And to me, it's all about, can you now articulate the actual value you're providing with it and not without just assuming I just say AI and that has some meaning for people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in some cases, it's even starting to have a backlash, negative meaning where people are like either ignoring it or just, oh, this is just buzz. This is,
Yeah.
tell me what you really do. So I think that's where we're quickly headed if we're not already there.
Well, back to the backlash. So my dad, the other day, I forget what it was, but it was an AI thing, agent calling him, talking to him on the phone, and he figured out it was AI. And he got kind of pissed off and he just started screwing around with it at that point because he knew it was AI. So he kept pushing it and pressuring it. But yeah, I think you will have some of that too. Even if it is capable, there's that nuance of, human interaction and the value that provides and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everything with AI moves faster than anything else we've experienced. And I think that
Yeah.
includes our perception of it and how quickly we've just assumed its capabilities in many ways, even though we're still just at the beginning of it all in
Yeah.
most ways. I mean, like you're saying, like we didn't even touch all the agentic stuff, but there's going to be a whole nother layer of this stuff that starts to come in that is going to continue to blow our minds.
Yeah. The way I equate it is like we're at the dial-up phase of this era where, you can't be on the phone and internet at the same time and you're doing your AOL instant messaging and chat. So that's where we are. So there's lots of room if you haven't dug in deep. But Clay,
Yeah.
thanks for awesome being on the Talking AI podcast, talking some AI from some different points of view, which is great. I love the kind of positioning angle, leveraging it in your business. But give us the spiel for Map and Fire and then the tool you walk through. I think people can go use it and test it out right now. They just go to the website and
Yep. You can go try it out for free. That's at smokeladder.com. You can check that out. And then, yeah, Map and Fire, like I said, we're focused on customer research, brand strategy, positioning, messaging. So if you're a company that's trying to figure out where you fit in this new crazy landscape, we can help you kind of figure that stuff out.
Which I think we all are. Awesome. Well, thanks for talking some AI, Clay.
Yeah, loved it. Great combo. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Talking AI podcast. If you enjoyed the show, give us a follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to leave us a review. We love those. For more info on Talking AI, visit talkingaipodcast.com.